Welcome, lore seekers, to the archives of ages past. Settle in, for the tale we unveil tonight is not one of triumphant kings or grand battles, but of quiet courage in the face of absolute darkness, a story etched in the final, desperate moments of a drowning world. In the Second Age of the Sun, there was an island gifted to men by the Valar themselves, Númenor, the land of the star, a beacon of civilization and power unlike any seen before or since. Its people were blessed with long life, wisdom, and a majesty that rivaled the elves of old. For millennia, they honored the Valar and Eru Ilúvatar, the One, and their realm prospered under a benevolent sky. But the hearts of men are easily swayed by the shadow of mortality. As their power grew, so too did their pride and their fear of death. They began to resent the gift of men, and coveted the immortality of the elves. This seed of discontent, planted deep within their souls, would one day grow into a tree of poison, choking the light from their blessed isle. The culmination of this pride came with the 25th king, Ar-Pharazôn. Mighty and vainglorious, he would not suffer any rival to his power. Hearing of a new dark lord in Middle-earth who styled himself King of Men, Ar-Pharazôn assembled the greatest armada the world had ever seen, and sailed to challenge this upstart, this being known as Sauron. Such was the might of Númenor, that Sauron's own armies deserted him. Seeing he could not win by force, the deceiver chose another path, guile. He submitted to Ar-Pharazôn, feigning utter defeat and admiration. The proud king, his ego immeasurably inflated, took Sauron back to Númenor as a hostage, a living trophy of his power. It was the greatest mistake in the history of men, for Sauron was a master of corruption. In just 3 years he went from prisoner to the king's most trusted advisor. He played upon Ar-Pharazôn's deepest fear, death. He denied the existence of Eru, calling him a fiction invented by the Valar to keep men in servitude. He spoke of another power, a lord of darkness, Melkor, who could grant true freedom and life everlasting, and the king listened. A great temple was built in the heart of the city. The worship of Eru and the Valar was forbidden on pain of death. A new religion, one of darkness and power, swept through the land. Those who resisted were offered as sacrifices upon the temple's black altar, their cries silenced by the chanting of the new cult. Númenor, the land of the star, had fallen into shadow. Yet not all were swayed. In the west of the island, in the port city of Andúni, the old ways were remembered. Here lived the descendants of the lords of Andúni, who had ever remained friends to the elves. They were known as the Faithful, the Elendilis, for they held true to their faith in Eru and their friendship with the Eldar. Their leader was Elendil, a man of great wisdom and noble lineage, a direct descendant of the first kings. He had once been a friend to Ar-Pharazôn and sat on his council, but as Sauron's influence grew, Elendil was pushed aside, his counsel of wisdom dismissed as foolishness and treason. He watched in horror as the land he loved descended into madness. By his side was his son, Elendil, a great captain and a man of immense stature, both in body and in spirit. And Elendil had 2 sons of his own, Isildur and Anarion, who were raised in the shadow of this growing evil, taught in secret the lore and languages that were now forbidden. They were a family living on borrowed time, their loyalty a death sentence if discovered. The ultimate symbol of their heritage, the white tree Nimloth, a seedling from the trees of Valinor itself, stood in the king's court. Sauron, hating all things of the Valar, demanded it be cut down. For a time, Ar-Pharazôn hesitated, for an ancient prophecy foretold that the line of kings would end when the tree perished. But Isildur, Elendil's elder son, would not let this sacrilege pass unchallenged. Filled with a fire and courage that defied the darkness, he undertook a desperate mission. Disguised as a common worker, he crept into the forbidden courts of the king under the cover of a new moon, a place now guarded by men loyal only to Sauron. He moved like a phantom through the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was thick with the foul incense from the new temple, and the silence of the court was a heavy, menacing thing. He reached the hallowed ground where Nimloth stood, its faint light a beacon of hope in the oppressive gloom. Just as he secured a single, silver fruit from its branches, the guards were alerted. A cry went up. Isildur scrambled down, but he was not quick enough. He was surrounded and forced to fight his way out, alone against many. He was grievously wounded, suffering many blows, but he clutched the precious fruit to his chest, his only thought to escape with the tree's future. He returned to his family appearing as one already dead, and for many months he lay hovering on the brink of life and death. But the fruit he had saved was planted in secret, and as its seedling began to sprout, Isildur's strength returned. The life of the tree was bound to the life of the faithful, a sign that hope had not yet been extinguished. Elendil saw the signs of the end. He knew that the king, now fully in Sauron's thrall, was preparing for an act of madness that would bring ruin upon them all. He gathered Elendil and his most trusted followers. They could not save Númenor, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could save a remnant. A plan was formed, a secret exodus. In the eastern port of Romena, where the influence of the king's men was weaker, Elendil began to prepare. He gathered all who remained faithful to the old ways. They built 9 ships, ostensibly for trade, but they were stocked for a long and desperate voyage. They loaded them not with gold or treasures, but with things far more valuable: books of lore, heirlooms of their people, and the 7 seeing stones, the asterisk palantiri, gifts from the elves long ago. Meanwhile, Sauron played his final card. He told Ar-Pharazôn that the true source of immortality lay in the Undying Lands themselves, in Valinor. He claimed the Valar hoarded this gift, and that a king as mighty as Ar-Pharazôn had every right to take it by force. The aging king, terrified of his own mortality, was convinced. He would wage war upon the gods themselves. A shadow of dread fell upon the land. All the wealth and power of Númenor were bent to this single, insane purpose. A great fleet was built, larger and more terrible than any before. The skies grew dark, and the earth trembled, as if the very island groaned in protest. The Valar sent warnings. Great eagles flew from the west in a threatening display. Storms racked the coasts, and the ground shook. But the king, deafened by Sauron's lies, would not be deterred. Seeing that the end was inevitable, Elendil decided upon one last, desperate gamble. He would attempt what only his ancestor Elendil had done before: to sail into the Forbidden West and plead with the Valar for mercy. Not for all of Númenor, which was beyond saving, but for the faithful who had kept the light alive. He told his son Elendil to be ready, to take their people and flee to the east at the first sign of the king's departure. And so, Elendil, the last lord of Andúni, sailed away into the twilight, his fate unknown. He was never seen again in Middle-earth. Whether he reached the shores of Valinor or was swallowed by the wrath of the sea, no tale can tell. His was a sacrifice of pure, selfless hope in a world consumed by despair. Soon after, Ar-Pharazôn's great armament was complete. He boarded his flagship and led his fleet into the west to challenge the lords of power and seize eternal life. As they departed, Sauron remained behind, standing atop his dark temple, a triumphant smile on his face as he watched his ultimate plan come to fruition. In Romena, Elendil watched them go. He gathered his family, his followers, and the 9 ships laden with the last remnants of Númenor's true heritage. They weighed anchor but did not set sail, waiting offshore as Elendil had instructed, their hearts heavy with a terrible foreboding. They were now adrift between a doomed past and an unknown future. The fleet of Ar-Pharazôn breached the enchantments that guarded the Undying Lands and arrived at the shores of Aman. The king himself, filled with pride and madness, stepped onto the sacred soil, claiming it for his own. At that moment, the fate of the world was sealed. The Valar laid down their guardianship and called upon the One, Eru Ilúvatar, and the world was changed. A great chasm opened in the sea. The fleets of Ar-Pharazôn were consumed, pulled into the abyss. The king and all his warriors who set foot on the Undying Lands were buried under falling hills, trapped in the caves of the Forgotten until the last battle. But the wrath of Eru was not for the fleet alone. It was for the heart of the rebellion, Númenor itself. The foundations of the island were broken. With a roar that shook the heavens, the land of the star began to sink. Fire and ash erupted from Meneltarma, and the seas rushed in, a great, unstoppable wave that devoured the cities and the plains. The pride of Númenor, its knowledge, its power, its people, all were wiped from the face of the earth. The beautiful island was plunged beneath the waves, lost forever. Akallabêth. The Downfallen, it was named thereafter. Sauron himself, caught in the ruin, had his physical body destroyed, but his spirit, diminished and unable to ever again assume a fair form, endured and fled back to Mordor, filled with a renewed hatred for the survivors. For there were survivors. Elendil and his followers, anchored to the east, were caught in the backlash of the cataclysm. A wind of unimaginable force, a storm born of the world's remaking, seized their 9 ships. But instead of destroying them, it drove them eastward, faster than any ship had ever sailed, carrying them away from the maelstrom that had been their home. They were tossed upon the waves for many days, grieving for their lost land, for their families and friends swallowed by the sea. They were the last remnant of Númenor, refugees carrying the memory of a fallen grace. At last, the storm passed, and they saw before them the shores of a familiar land, Middle-earth. Elendil landed in the north, founding the realm of Arnor. His sons, Isildur and Anarion, were driven further south by the storm, and they landed at the mouth of the great river Anduin, where they would found the realm of Gondor. And in their possession was a seedling, grown from the fruit Isildur had saved, which they would plant in Minas Ithil, a symbol of a past that was not entirely lost, and a future that was yet to be written. Thus, the loyalty of one family, their quiet defiance in an age of utter darkness, ensured that the light of men was not extinguished. Though their home was drowned and their people lost, the line of kings endured. The faithful had survived the shadow, carrying a legacy of hope out of the very heart of despair, a legacy that would one day be crucial in a new war against the same ancient evil. The echoes of Númenor's fall serve as a stark reminder that even the greatest light can be consumed by shadow if pride is allowed to rule. If this chronicle of loyalty and loss has stirred your spirit, honor the memory of the faithful with a like, and subscribe to our channel to uncover more hidden lore from the depths of time. Until our paths cross again, farewell.